Joseph Barbera was born in a small neighborhood in New York City on March 24, 1911. He grew up in a busy city, and as a child, he was always fascinated by drawing. While other children played outside, Joseph would spend hours drawing pictures in his notebook. Little did he know that his love for art would lead him to create some of the most famous cartoons in the world. Joseph Barbera was born into an Italian-American family. His parents, Vincenzo and Gabriella, were immigrants who came to the United States looking for a better life. Joseph was the youngest of 4 children. His family didn't have much money, but they always supported him and encouraged his creativity. When Joseph was a young boy, he often went to the local movie theater with his brothers. They loved watching cartoons. The bright colors and funny characters made him laugh, and Joseph began to dream about making cartoons himself. He was also inspired by the comic strips he saw in the newspapers. Artists like Winsor McCay, who created the famous cartoon Little Nemo, were his heroes. Joseph attended the Manual Training High School, where he learned about drawing and design. After graduation, he went to the prestigious Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. There, he studied more about art and animation. However, when the Great Depression hit in the 1930s, jobs were hard to find. Many companies closed and people struggled to find work. But Joseph never gave up on his dream. In the early 1930s, Joseph found his first job in the animation world at a company called Van Buren Studios. It wasn't a big studio, but it was a start. Joseph worked on creating cartoons and learned a lot about how cartoons were made. He spent long hours drawing characters and making sure that every frame looked perfect. Joseph's big break came when he got a job at MGM, one of the most famous film studios in Hollywood. This was a huge opportunity. At MGM, Joseph met his future partner, William Hanna. William, like Joseph, loved cartoons and had a talent for drawing. The two men became good friends and began to work together. In 1957, Joseph Barbera and William Hanna decided to start their own animation studio. They called it Hanna-Barbera Productions. The studio quickly became very successful, and their cartoons were loved by children all over the world. They created some of the most popular and lasting characters in cartoon history. In 1960, Hanna-Barbera released their first big television show, The Flintstones. The show was set in a fictional prehistoric town called Bedrock. The main characters were Fred Flintstone and his wife, Wilma, along with their friends, Barney and Betty Rubble. The Flintstones was the first prime-time animated TV show. It was a big risk, but it worked. People loved the show, and it became a huge hit. The Flintstones was a fun and funny show, but it also had a lot of clever ideas. It showed the everyday lives of the Flintstone family, who lived in a world that looked like the Stone Age but was full of modern problems and inventions. For example, Fred drove a car that was powered by his feet, and the family's phone was a large bird that squawked when it rang. The show was not just funny, it also changed television. Before the Flintstones, cartoons were only for children, but the show was something that both kids and adults could enjoy. It became one of the most popular shows on television, and helped Hanna-Barbera's studio become even more famous. After the success of the Flintstones, Hanna-Barbera went on to create many other famous cartoons. One of their next big hits was The Jetsons, which came out in 1962. The Jetsons was set in the future and featured a family that lived in a world of flying cars, robots, and high-tech gadgets. While The Flintstones was about the past, the Jetsons showed what the future might be like. In the 1960s and 1970s, Hanna-Barbera produced many more famous characters, such as Yogi Bear and his sidekick Boo Boo, Top Cat, Scooby-Doo, and the Smurfs. Each of these shows was unique, but they all had a few things in common: fun characters, exciting stories, and a lot of humor. One of the most famous cartoons that Joseph Barbera and William Hanna created was Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The show first aired in 1969 and became an instant success. It followed a group of teenagers and their talking dog, Scooby-Doo, as they solved mysteries. The show was unique because it combined humor with mystery. Each episode featured the gang trying to solve a problem, usually involving a spooky ghost or monster. At the end of each episode, the gang would catch the villain, and Scooby-Doo would celebrate with his favorite food, Scooby Snacks. Scooby-Doo became one of the most famous cartoons ever made, and it has been on television in various forms ever since. There have been many different versions of the show, including movies, video games, and even a live-action film. Scooby-Doo is loved by generations of children, and the characters have become part of pop culture. Joseph Barbera and William Hanna didn't just create cartoons. They changed the way cartoons were made and became a part of the history of television. Their characters and shows are still remembered today, and many of their creations have been passed down through generations. The influence of Hanna-Barbera can be seen in cartoons made by other companies, and many of their ideas are still used today. In the 1980s, Hanna-Barbera became part of a larger media company called Time Warner. This meant that their cartoons could be shown on more platforms, and their characters were featured in many different ways. Today, Hanna-Barbera's cartoons are still being shown on TV, and characters like Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, and the Flintstones continue to be loved by children and adults alike. Joseph Barbera continued to work in animation for many years. He was always passionate about cartoons and loved seeing new generations enjoy the characters he had helped create. He received many awards during his career, including an Emmy Award for his work in television animation. Joseph Barbera passed away in 2006, but his legacy lives on through his work. Joseph Barbera's story is one of creativity, hard work, and never giving up on your dreams. He started as a boy who loved to draw, and over the years, he created some of the most beloved cartoons in the world. With his partner, William Hanna, he changed the way cartoons were made and helped shape the world of television animation. Today, characters like Scooby-Doo, Fred Flintstone, and Yogi Bear continue to entertain audiences young and old. Joseph Barbera's impact on the world of animation will never be forgotten, and his cartoons will continue to bring joy to people for many years to come.